Hello, everyone. Welcome to eLearnChat, where it is all about learning. My name is Rick Zanotti, and I am joined today by my good friend and co-host today. It is Ajay Pangarkar, coming to us from Canada, up north. How are you, Ajay?
Doing well, Rick, and glad to be here with you again.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. Now, technically, Joe Ganchi is our guest today, but we don't know if he's having a problem logging in or getting on or stuck in traffic or having a good Italian meal somewhere and forgot. We don't know. But he'll be on hopefully in a couple minutes. In the meantime, Ajay, and maybe Harold will join us too. Harold is our video producer, and he's patiently waiting to see if Joe comes on. So here we go.
This show is sponsored by Relate Corporation. Visit us at www.relatecasts.net. Thanks.
And we are back, and he's not in the center position of power today. He's just more like the co-pilot right now. So we're both piloting here today. We've got Ajay with us. How you doing, Ajay?
I'm good, because if you're the head pilot, then we're in really good hands.
Oh, we're in bad hands.
I wouldn't trust
bad eyes.
Yeah, but I wouldn't trust my piloting skills. I go with your bad eyes before my piloting skills.
I do know how to pilot to a certain point. I just don't know. Landing would probably maybe be tough. I could probably land better at night than daytime, because at night they have lights. It's like, oh, I can see that. So,
oh my
scary
goodness.
thought.
So how you been, Rick?
I am doing great, and I'm glad you could join us today. Maybe Joe will join us in a couple minutes, but in the meantime, you have a new course. We were talking pre-show about something new you've done. You've done, what is it, interviewing skills for accountants?
Yep. So as you know, I do I've been a regular family member of LinkedIn Learning for a few years now, and really privileged to be that kind of member of your family. And I think we're up to, I've lost count here, the 6th or 7th course, but the latest course that was released was Interview Skills for Accountants, where I developed a list of questions and then walked them through how to go about answering those questions and what's the expectation. So, it's not just for accounting, by the way. I just want people to know that LinkedIn has decided to create these series of types of courses if you're going for different positions, like interviewing for marketing or HR or stuff like that. So if they get a chance, if people get a chance and they're on LinkedIn, check out these courses. They're pretty useful skills to have in your back pocket.
That's true. It's true, because, interviewing skills, it's funny when you talk about interviewing skills. One of them is like you're doing, being interviewed, but the other one is being an interviewer. And frankly, very few people are ever taught how to interview someone, whether it's a SME, whether it's anybody. So as a result, many times the interviewers have no idea what to ask.
Oh my goodness, Rick, I don't know how many times I've seen bad interviewing. And I don't understand organizations who do not, give their managers opportunities to learn how to interview.
Exactly.
Because it's an important role. You're bringing in a person into your organization, or people into your organization that you want them to stay, of course, and you want to select the right people. So why aren't you equipping people to ask the right questions in the right way to assess that skill set? But to your point, Rick, I've seen way too many bad interviewers in my time. And hey, right here at the beginning, I've learned the skills since then, but at the beginning, I was terrible at interviewing. So
it takes practice, and that's a whole the other thing. Nobody is a great interviewer at day one. It takes practice, because the person being interviewed is nervous. The interviewer often is nervous. So you have two people that are kind of just clashing. Dunk. We're both nervous. And how do you get a good response out of somebody when you're either too nervous to ask a question? And a lot of managers today are very afraid to ask, because so many things are verboten. You are not allowed to talk about that. So what do you ask? There are so many rules of what you can and can't ask. That question is loaded, or that question is racist, or this question is, and it's like you can't ask anything. How often do you breathe per day? I mean, that's safe, I guess.
Well, not to the breathing challenge, but anyways. But to your point, I mean, this is all said in jest what I'm about to say. My old boss said to me, just get a big fat old telephone book. If people remember what telephone books is, put it in your chair if you're interviewing, so you're higher than the other person, the candidate, so you can intimidate them. And he was joking too, so don't get me wrong.
But that is true. That is true. A lot of places will have a higher desk, and they will put a low chair for the interviewee. So the person is down there. So, have you always been that small? It's like, no. But there's a psychological thing going on there, and people do stuff like that. It's sad.
It's incredible, though. Yeah, it is sad. No, Rick, seriously, it is. If you have to go to that extent, and if I went in to be interviewed at a company who's doing that, I'd probably just turn and walk away, because this is not a company I want to work for if they have a culture like that. That's really point one. It's a two-way street, right? So
this is actually a good topic, because this happens all the time. I remember when I was applying for a job as a programmer. This is 40-something years ago. And I get to the place, and they said, well, we really like you, and your skills seem really good, but we want to put you through a psychological profile test. I went, all right. Because it's half of those are BS-y. They don't prove anything. On any given day, you could do well or not so well. So I had to go to a psychologist to get the test. So I took the test. I rushed through it as fast as I could. I didn't want to get out of there. It was just a waste of time. And the guy said, you did really well on your English part, but on the math, you didn't do as well. He goes, you did okay, but I could tell you were rushing. I go, I probably just wanted to get it done with. And he goes, and then, you did really well on your spatial relationships test. Okay. And he goes, you don't seem to be happy here. I go, no, because the test is invalid. And he goes, well, what do you mean it's invalid? You know as well as I do that a test on any given day could have a good result, could have a bad result. It depends on 100 different variables. So what does this prove for me being a programmer? Nothing. So exactly. I didn't get the job, obviously. But I had a good time at least taking a worthless test and telling the psychologist I thought what he did was a waste of time. And so that's okay. I didn't get that, but I got a better job with the next interview. So I'm glad I didn't get it. But, but it was interesting because I challenged him. I said, what is the real purpose of this test? Well, we want to gauge, what are you trying to gauge? Well, we want to see, what your English skills are like. Talk to me. I can tell you what my English skills are like. I scored almost 100% on my SAT on English. So I don't have a problem with English. How about your math skills? I scored about 65, 70% on math. That wasn't my strong point. However, on logic, I was close to 100. And he's like, well, so I go, if you really want to learn something about something, ask them something that's useful. And he was having a real hard time, because I basically said, they just paid you $500 to do a test that doesn't prove anything. Give me a programming test. That would make more sense. Yeah. But obviously I was a troublemaker. So
it's interesting you bring that up, though, Rick, about the interviewer side. So I had posted a course up online, I'm very proud of it. Hopefully people will take it. But what was interesting, somebody would they were very kind and they were complimentary, saying that I did a good job. However, they said something interesting, that the questions I was asking was not something they've heard in their time being interviewed themselves. And I'm like, exactly to your point, Rick, it's not that they're not questions not asked. They're the questions that should be asked. And unfortunately, because of what you just said, the interviewer is not asking or not being appropriately trained or educated to interview appropriately. They're not asking the right questions, right? Like to your point of the test and psychological tests, I tell my young candidates, I teach in university, a lot of accounting students, and I tell them, when you're going for an interview, I said, as a student, your first foot in the door is usually your grades. But you want to impress the crap out of them, don't start reciting your grades. Show them the value you bring to the organization, right? When they're asking questions, show them what you can do. Show them the results. I mean, because that will differ. Even if you're a B student competing against an A student, chances are, if I'm looking at both of you and you, the B student, are showing me the solution and the results and how to work through something, guess who I'm hiring? And it's not the fancy dancy A student with the high GPA, right? So,
right.
It's really to a point that interviewers need to skill up big time.
Well, it's funny. A lot of the straight A students, and I married one, are with the program. They get with the program real quickly. They don't challenge. They don't think of new things. They're very good at doing what they're told to do. And that's okay. They serve a really good purpose. They're smart, but they're more book smart. Street common sense or other kind of, not that well. There are exceptions, of course, to everything we're saying. But I found often, a lot of times, the B and even the D students sometimes are brilliant. And you just go, they're a little different, and they may be a little more difficult sometimes, but they also have really good problem-solving skills. And that's, kind of like what you said. How do you solve the problem? Yeah. What's your approach to solving the problem? And interviews, more often than not, are just, well, what made you get into accounting? I like numbers. What do you really say? I love filling out sheets or forms. I like calculating things. I like this and that. But everybody will say almost the same thing as to why they got into it. So the question is sort of 100%. Like, why did you get into accounting? Oh, I love my school teacher. She was gorgeous. Now, that may be an honest answer, but that's going to throw that interviewer really off. Well, what does that have to do with accounting? Absolutely nothing, but she motivated me. and that's the kind of answer you can get. I interviewed for a position once at a bank, and it was really weird. I'd just gotten back from Argentina, where I lived for 3 years. And when I got back, I went to this bank. I'll let it, they don't even exist anymore, but I'll leave it unnamed. I get to the place, and this girl comes and gets me at the front and takes me to her desk and starts interviewing me. She goes, how do you feel working with women? I go, I have no problem working with women. I don't care if it's a guy, girl, chimpanzee, or dog. I work with people. That's part of life. Okay. Well, how do you feel if a woman's on top of you? So, to me, that was a loaded question. So I kind of snickered and went, well, it could be fun, I guess. And she's like, well, how do you, I mean, how would you feel if a woman was your boss? I go, I've worked for women before. I don't have a problem. I go, if somebody's competent, I don't care what they are. I really don't. I can work with anybody. If someone's an idiot, maybe I'll have a problem. But for the most part, I like people. I like working with people. I do my job. There are people who cause problems. There are people who just do their job. I do my job. I usually don't cause problems. I do my job. Leave me alone. I'll do my job. And I didn't get the job at all. And I think it's because they was stuck on this woman thing. I go, I don't care. I really don't care. She was trying to elicit a different response from me, but I really didn't care. I didn't care if it was a woman or someone. I've worked with some brilliant women. They were great to work with. I've worked with some idiot men. What's the difference? I mean, it doesn't really matter. Yeah. But these are questions that to me don't say, can you do your job? She didn't ask me one question about banking, which I knew quite a bit about at the time. I had been involved in international banking for 3 years, knew a lot about banking processes and running big loan registers. So I didn't ask one question about my experience. Odd.
Well, it's interesting that, and I think that's what's missing from both that relationship. I mean, I'm using the accounting example, but
sure,
what I'm saying can transition to any role that you're applying for. That I say this to my accounting students, and again, it could be instructional design, it could be anything. But I say you're going to walk in there and tell them how good you are in your accounting skills. I said, but so is every competitor going up for that job.
Right.
So what really makes you different, right? What makes you different? What elicits something that's going to them to step back and say, oh, right, like you said, Rick, what's going to get them to sit back and say, pause for a moment and question why is that different as an answer? And I said, you really do want to stand out. And when I say stand out, don't do a song and dance and whatever that you need to do, but stand out, showing that you are more than just, in my case with these students, I call them bean counters and number crunchers, affectionately, of course, because I am a CPA myself. But you want to be more than that. You want to be a problem solver. You want to be a team leader or a team player. You want to show these things that a lot of people are going to say, no, I'm really good at accounting or I'm good at instructional design. Big whoop. I can pick anybody then. So
now, let me ask you.
You don't want to be a commodity, is what I'm saying. You want to be something that's unique.
Here's a question I used to ask people, because sometimes I have hired either accountants or people who were systems analysts or program analysts who had to program accounting applications. Yeah. So I would take them out of their comfort zone a little bit. And I would say, okay, Jim, John, whatever. Okay, Jim, let me give you a scenario. It's month end. You're balancing your books. You are 5 cents off on one of the ledgers. What do you do? And invariably, the answers were, well, I would set up a team of auditors and we'd figure out where those 5 cents went. Okay. Another guy would say something like, well, I'd take the time and maybe do an audit of that myself, or maybe run a program that could figure out what happened to the 5 cents, and we could locate it. Okay.
Yeah.
My answer would be, I throw 5 cents in, fix it, and we're done. Why waste money for a damn nickel? That 5 cents doesn't matter anything. Just write it off. You're going to spend $450 to find a nickel?
Yeah.
Not worth it. That was my banking experience. That was Citibank in those days. They would sometimes spend $1,000 to find a nickel. And you just go, okay, maybe the nickel, just adjust it. There's got to, put it in some suspense account, figure it out later. But really, to spend that kind of money, and that's where accounting gets a little crazy sometimes. You want accurate numbers, but to spend thousands to fix something small. But the reason I bring that up is the approach. I was looking for approaches. How would they solve the problem?
Yeah.
And very few people. I had one guy who says, I don't care, just 5 cents, just write it off. Okay, you're right. Better than spending $5,000 on it. And I've seen it in real life where people would spend $5,000 maybe to find 5 cents. And when they found it, it was usually just an accounting error somewhere that they didn't even have to go look for. It was just the ledgers incorrect. Somebody this is when not everything was done on computers. Some things were done with the calculators by hand. Somebody missed a number. Oops. But think of this in terms of, I know people are going, what does this have to do with like e-learning?
Exactly.
But actually everything. Because in e-learning, you're going to run into these kind of situations, these questions. You have to interview people. If you're an instructional designer, there's a good chance you're interviewing someone who's an expert at something else. You need to find out what their processes are, not just what they do, but why they do it. Because then you can make sense of what you're trying to teach. And more often than not, they don't ask that. There's always the who, what, when, where, why, and how. That's part of it. And how is usually ignored. They don't care about that. It's not a W, so therefore how is bad. Let's ignore it. Let's cancel how. So you look at stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, to your point, Rick, it's important. People, as you know me, Rick, it's a little bit of tough love on the learning space.
Yeah.
The thing about that is, if you're interviewing people in the learning space, it's more than just knowing how to use these fancy softwares that we have, whether it be things like Articulate or Captivate or Camtasia, or whatever, whatever tools you're using. Great, they can use that, fine. But to your point is that, do you understand why you're building this course, right? Those 5 whys and the how. Like, why are you building this course? What is its purpose? What is intent? Have you talked to the end user, and what I usually refer as the customer, that internal customer that requires it? Are you delivering it in a way that they want it? Now, I'm getting into the ID side a little bit, or the needs assessment, but you would want to position your questions, those people you're interviewing and to bring in to be learning developers or learning developers. You want to ask them those questions like, tell me about a process that you help build a learning solution around that helps solve that problem. Yeah. Because what you're going to do is open up the conversation of seeing how they understand the not the vehicle, the learning itself, but the process of solving the problem, right? So,
and imagine if you know how they solve their problem. And instructional designers can be really bright, but they usually don't go that next step to make recommendations. They're just taking information of how it's currently done, and they try to train to it. But what if you went in as an instructional designer, or let's say you assume that role every so often, and you ask, that makes a lot of sense what you just said, but have you ever thought of doing this? And many SMEs will go, I never thought of that.
Yeah.
And it may actually save money. It may save time.
I had some experience working with, as you know, Rick, with Apple and Nest and so forth, and a few big firms. And when I would be collaborating with their learning teams, it wasn't, again, it goes back to the culture of the organization, right? It goes back to the point where these teams weren't the afterthought, number one. They weren't a team that was reactionary. They were actually well vested in the business process.
Okay.
So when they were solving a problem and the outcome, right? I mean, it wasn't just siloed where, hey, the learning team has to develop something. No, there was a cross-functional team of, we were working on the, what people commonly refer to as, what's am I looking for? Not Genius, the Apple Care.
Oh, Apple Care.
Sorry.
That's related to the Genius Bar and all that. Yep.
Yeah. But Apple Care, and when the client called in, right, Apple has a reputation, or still has a reputation, of being able to fix the problems relatively quickly. And granted, I'm not going to sit here and be a cheerleader for them. They're not perfect, but they're probably significantly ahead of other companies when it comes to solving. And I know my experience with Apple products when I've had problems and I've called in. By the way, even to this day, I still have my old MacBook Pro. I had a problem a few months ago with it. I have a new laptop, but I had an old problem with it, and I called Apple to see if they can help me solve it. 10 years into it, they were still helping me fix it and finding a solution. And what does it speak to? It speaks to not just the learning team supporting the learning of that support person. They call them worldwide contact center representatives, but the fact that they could get the answers. Yeah. That's all about learning, tying it into the process, tying into the business objectives, tying into the mission of Apple to make sure the Apple customer, who paid a significant premium for that product, by the way, gets the support and service they deserve. Now, that speaks to the point of hiring the right people and understanding what those people need to know, because the people who are training these customer care people are not just doing it in a silo somewhere behind a cubicle. They're actually in a team working with other people and other divisions and departments to help understand the process and the problem at hand. And that speaks volume to the hiring process of Apple. Right.
Yeah.
So again, it goes back to knowing who you're hiring. You don't just want to be, what do you call the organ grinder or monkey grinder there that just does the same thing over and over again. You want somebody who's actually going to add value to that organization. And it speaks volumes to the quality of these kind of companies. I mean, sorry to drone on here, but here's another example. Starbucks, when you walk into Starbucks anywhere in the world and you get that, first of all, their menus are already customized coffees, right? Mm-hmm. But then you get the person in front of you further customizing it. Either way, you can go anywhere in the world, and the coffee at the end of the process that you get 3 minutes later is probably 99.5% identical anywhere in the world. Again, that speaks to the integration of learning those baristas how to do their job around the world consistently. To me, it blows my mind that happens and how strong their learning department is.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, because if you look at Marriott, for example, actually Marriott, Hilton, all the big hotel chains, whenever you go to, let's say, a Marriott Courtyard, anywhere in the world, they're exactly the same for the most part. And they said they did that for business travelers, so when they got somewhere, they didn't have to worry about it. They already know the layout, they know the drill, they know where everything is, and it's simple. And as someone who used to travel a lot, it was great going to hotels where you kind of know where they are. You know what the rooms look like. You know where the restaurants are. The food is so consistent usually that it's an experience you're looking forward to, because you know it's going to be the same. Unless you're looking for something totally different. But that's part of, like you said, that whole culture of embracing the client's needs more than just, putting it out there.
It's a consistency of process, right? And if you're a learning and development person hiring other learning and development people, the first thing you want to be looking at, you're going to get a slew of applications of everybody saying they know how to use Articulate or whatever, and all this kind of stuff, and they know instructional design. So everybody's the same. It doesn't make a difference. And even if they don't know one of those skills, who cares? If they don't know one of those skills, you probably can teach them, because they're teachable skills.
Yeah.
What you can't really teach and they have to bring to the table is that problem solving, that holistic approach to creating a solution and understanding the results of the organizations. That's what I'm looking for, right? I'm not looking for the person who checks all the boxes and what it needs to defined as an e-learning designer.
Yep.
And really, I think you need to. And unfortunately, I hate to say this, but L&D and to a large extent, and I say large extent because I don't want to generalize fully, but L&D tend to be very isolated in their thinking.
Right.
For a group that defines learning is isolated in their thinking. It's like an oxymoron. It just blowing, like, you guys don't want to learn, but you're telling everybody else to learn. There's something wrong with this. But
well, actually, that goes back to the old. Look at engineers. They develop all sorts of new and amazing things, and they hate change.
Yeah.
It happens. You just go, wait a minute, how can you be an engineer and not like change? You develop change. That's different. Don't make me learn anything new. Okay. Doctors, they hate going to every 2 years of training or whatever. Most of them hate it. Accountants don't even like going to the training usually when they go every year or two to revalidate. And it's funny because I don't want to know anything new. And imagine if you keep yourself up and learn something every single day. Life's better. You as you get older, you're always going to learn new things. You have something to look forward to. Always learn. Keep that, and use that as part of your experience. And that's what I think a lot of people don't quite get, that the more you know, the more experience you have, especially if you can apply it.
Well, it's funny because the one skill I apply for learning, not me personally, but when I'm managing teams or staff, is, I make sure they get their skills up, kept up to date, their whatever skills they have as a specialist, going to their trade, the trade meeting or trade show or whatever it is, to the conference, to keep that up to par and take different necessary courses. That aside, I make sure that they are able to go to other areas that's diversified, that helps build our business. And really, that's really important in the learning process. Yeah.
And that music in that background, I can hear it in my headset.
Yeah.
That
surprised me.
We're at the end of me too, because we are at the end of the show. Well, Ajay, I'm glad you could make it today. I hope Joe's okay. I hope it was just confusion on schedule or something, because when people don't show up, we always get worried. But we talked to him earlier; he was okay, so hopefully he's okay. And we'll have Joe back on another day. And Ajay, as always, a pleasure to see you. And I heard a rumor that your beautiful wife may actually become a guest one day.
Oh, man, you said that on air. She's going to kill me now.
No. I heard that. Not from you. I heard that from somebody else. I think it was Anthony. But we won't talk about that. Anyway, if you're listening,
maybe,
Terry.
Rick, maybe.
Yeah, Terry, if you're listening, it wasn't Ajay, trust me. You can be a guest anytime. We love you. So don't worry about it. Ajay.
By the way, be careful inviting her. She might rant. I mean, she's got a rant to go on. So
that could be good. We like rants. Rants are okay. Anyway, well, Ajay, again, appreciate it. Good luck on all the classes that you're doing with LinkedIn Learning, and keep up the great work.
Thank you very much. And it was great being here, Rick. I really appreciate it, Harold. Thanks a lot. And being a co-host is kind of fun. So I really
we were just hosting ourselves today, but it can be fun. Anyway, and if you're watching in the audience, thank you very much. Please subscribe if you haven't, and give us your feedback. We always love hearing from you. We will see you next week. Well, actually, we have a new program, a new service we're starting. We're going to have a video on this later, but I'll let you know right now real quickly. $50. It's a cheap investment, not much. And we will analyze your audio recordings, tell you good, bad, indifferent, what you can do better, how you can do it better. And we'll also give you our 3-hour Sounding Great audio basics for e-learning and more course, so that you can get more into audio. But really, what we will do is check your audio, listen to your studio, listen to the kind of mics you have, preamplifiers, and we'll give you advice. We'll give you advice on what to buy, what not to buy, and what your goals are. We'll help you reach them. Sounding great. We'll see you next week on eLearnChat. Have a good one, everyone. Thanks. Thanks, Ajay.
Okay.